The bullet was meant for him. Everyone in that warehouse saw it coming. The flash of gunmetal from the rafters, the assassin's finger tightening on the trigger, the perfect trajectory aimed straight at Park Joon-ho's heart. 20 armed men in that room, the most dangerous criminals in Chicago, and not one of them moved fast enough. But she did. 1 second, Amara was standing 3 feet behind him, invisible like always, just another nobody who organized files and fetched coffee. The next second, she was flying through the air, her body slamming into his, driving him toward the concrete floor as thunder cracked above them. The bullet meant for his chest found her instead. Blood erupted across her white silk blouse like a crimson flower blooming in fast motion. And Park Joon-ho, the man who controlled half of Chicago's criminal underworld, the man who hadn't shed a tear in 18 years, the man whose name alone made hardened killers lose sleep at night, he caught her in his arms before she hit the ground and felt something inside his chest shatter into a million jagged pieces. No, 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 he heard himself saying, the words spilling out like a prayer he had forgotten how to speak. Her blood was warm and wet against his hands, spreading too fast, way too fast. Amara, look at me, look at me. Her eyes fluttered, struggling to focus on his face. She tried to speak, but only a whisper of breath escaped her lips. Why? The word tore out of him like a howl, echoing off the warehouse walls, freezing every person in that room. Why would you do that? She couldn't answer. Her eyes were already rolling back, her body going limp in his arms, her heartbeat fading beneath his desperate hands. And in that moment, Park Joon-ho would have burned his entire empire to the ground just to hear her say his name one more time. The chaos that erupted around him barely registered. His men were shouting, gunfire exploding in sharp bursts as they hunted the assassin through the shadows of the warehouse. The Kozlov representatives were scrambling for cover, their carefully planned ambush unraveling into bloody disaster. Somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail, but Joon-ho heard none of it. His entire universe had collapsed into the woman bleeding out in his arms. Get the car, he snarled at Vincent, his second in command. Now, and call Dr. Chen. Tell him if she dies, he dies. Vincent had served Joon-ho for 16 years. He had seen his boss order executions without blinking, negotiate deals worth hundreds of millions with ice-cold precision, and walk through violence like other men walk through rain. He had never, not once, seen him afraid, until tonight. Boss, we need to secure the— I don't care about the building. Joon-ho's voice cracked like breaking glass. I don't care about the Kozlovs. I don't care about anything except getting her to Chen in the next 10 minutes. Move, Vincent moved. Joon-ho gathered Amara against his chest and stood, her blood soaking through his $1,000 suit, ruining it forever. He didn't care. He would have worn her blood like a badge of honor if it meant she survived. She was so light in his arms. Had she always been this light, this fragile? He had watched her from afar for months, cataloging every detail about her with the obsessive attention he usually reserved for enemies. Her quiet laugh that she tried to hide behind her hand. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. The grace notes of kindness she showed to everyone around her, from the janitors to the executives, treating every person like they mattered. She had been invisible to most people in his organization. She had never been invisible to him, and now she was dying because of him. The drive to Dr. Chen's private clinic was the longest 12 minutes of Joon-ho's life. He sat in the back of the armored SUV with Amara's head in his lap, his hand pressed against the wound in her chest, trying to hold her blood inside her body through sheer force of will. Stay with me, he kept saying, his voice raw and breaking. Amara, please, you don't get to leave, not like this, not for me. She was so pale. The rich warmth of her brown skin had faded to something ashen and gray. Her breathing was shallow, each exhale a wet rattle that made his stomach clench with terror. You hear me? He leaned closer, his lips brushing her forehead. I'm ordering you to survive. That's a direct command from your boss. You've never disobeyed an order, so don't start now. A ghost of a smile flickered across her lips, or maybe he imagined it. Maybe he was already going mad with grief and inventing comfort where none existed. Vincent. His voice came out steady, controlled, the mask of the crime lord sliding back into place even as his heart hemorrhaged inside his chest. Find out who hired the shooter. I want names, addresses, and everyone they've ever loved, by morning. Yes, boss. And Vincent, yes, when you find them, don't kill them. Joon-ho's eyes were black holes of carefully contained fury. Bring them to me alive. I want them to experience every second of what's coming. Vincent nodded slowly. In 16 years, he had learned to recognize the different flavors of his boss's anger. Cold anger meant efficiency, surgical removal of problems. Hot anger meant bodies that would never be found. This was neither. This was something new, something worse. The quiet, absolute fury of a man who had discovered something worth protecting and would destroy the entire world to keep it safe. They reached the clinic just as Amara's pulse stuttered and stopped. Dr. Chen was waiting at the entrance with his surgical team, already gloved and gowned. He took one look at the woman in Joon-ho's arms and started barking orders in rapid Korean. She's not breathing, Joon-ho heard himself say, the words distant and strange like they were coming from someone else's mouth. Her heart stopped in the car. I tried to, we've got her. Chen and his team lifted Amara onto a gurney, already cutting away her bloodied clothing. Someone get him out of here. No, Junho grabbed the gurney rail. I'm not leaving her. Mr. Park, I can't save her life with you in my way. She needs surgery now. Every second you waste arguing is a second she doesn't have. The words hit him like a physical blow. He released the gurney. For the next 6 hours, Park Junho sat in the waiting room of a clinic he owned but had never visited, surrounded by medical equipment worth millions and artwork selected by decorators whose names he didn't remember, and felt utterly, completely powerless. He had built an empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and an iron will that refused to bend. He had survived assassination attempts, police investigations, and rivals who wanted him dead. He had clawed his way from his father's modest gambling operation to a criminal network that stretched across 3 states, and none of it mattered. None of it could help her now. He called in updates from Vincent, learning that the assassin had been captured alive but barely. Learning that the Kozlovs were scrambling to deny involvement, their protestations of innocence increasingly desperate as Junho's men systematically dismantled their operations across the city. Learning that the hit had been commissioned by Mikhail Kozlov, the underboss, acting without his father's knowledge or approval. The elder Kozlov is offering Mikhail's head as a peace offering, Vincent reported. Literally, he's asking how you want it delivered. Any other night, Junho would have appreciated the dark poetry of a father sacrificing his son to maintain peace. Tonight, he couldn't find the energy to care. Tell him I'll be in touch. Boss, our people are asking for direction. The Kozlov thing has destabilized the entire north side. Other families are starting to make moves. We need to handle it. What? I said handle it, Vincent. Make decisions. You've been with me long enough to know what I would do. Whatever happens in the next 24 hours, I don't care. The only thing I care about is the woman in that operating room. Silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, you really love her, don't you? Junho closed his eyes. Love, such a simple word for something so complicated. Did he love her? He barely knew her. They had exchanged maybe 100 words in the 6 months she had worked for his organization. She was his employee, a nobody, a woman who existed in the background of his life like furniture or wallpaper. Except that wasn't true. She had never been furniture to him. From the very first day, she had been something else. A puzzle, a question, a mystery wrapped in quiet competence and hidden depths that made him want to dig deeper, to peel back her layers, to understand what made her different from everyone else in his world. I don't know what I feel, he finally admitted. But I know that if she dies, something in me dies too, and I'm not sure what would be left. Then let's make sure she doesn't die. The line went dead. Junho sat in the silence, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the distant beeping of machines, and waited. He thought about the first time he had noticed her. It was her second day on the job. She had been delivering files to his office, knocking softly before entering, her eyes downcast in the proper deference expected of new employees. But when she handed him the folder, their fingers brushed and she had looked up, just for a moment, just long enough for him to see the intelligence burning behind those dark eyes, the awareness, the assessment. She had been reading him, he realized later, studying him with the same careful attention he applied to enemies and allies alike. Most people in his organization either feared him too much to make eye contact or were too eager to prove their worth to really see him. Amara had simply observed. Cataloged, understood, it should have triggered his survival instincts. An employee who watched that carefully, who noticed that much, could be a spy, an informant, a threat in waiting. He should have ordered an immediate investigation, pulled her personnel file, dug into every aspect of her background until he knew her secrets inside and out. Instead, he had found himself watching her in return. He learned her schedule, knew which days she arrived early and which days she stayed late. He noticed that she always brought her own lunch, simple meals packed in containers that spoke of careful budgeting. He observed how she treated other employees with a quiet warmth that made people relax around her, trust her, confide in her. She was gathering information, he was certain of it. Nobody was that attentive, that observant, that carefully positioned without an agenda. But what was the agenda? That was the question that consumed him. Was she working for the feds, a rival family? Some ambitious faction within his own organization looking to find weakness they could exploit. He had Vincent run a background check, standard procedure. The results were clean, almost too clean in fact. Amara Washington, 28 years old, born and raised in Chicago's South Side. Nursing degree from a community college, worked at Northwestern Memorial for 3 years before some kind of incident that wasn't fully documented. Brother who had died 2 years ago under circumstances that were labeled accidental but felt wrong. That brother's death was the key. Junho felt it in his bones. He dug deeper, using resources that went far beyond standard background checks. What he found changed everything. Damon Washington had owed money to a loan shark connected to the Kozlov family. When he couldn't pay, they made an example of him. Beat him so badly he died of internal bleeding in an alley behind a convenience store. The official cause of death was robbery gone wrong. The real cause was Mikhail Kozlov wanting to send a message about the cost of unpaid debts. Amara had spent 2 years after her brother's death becoming invisible. She had quit her nursing job, moved apartments 3 times, and systematically erased herself from any network that might connect her to her former life. Then, 6 months ago, she had applied for a position at Park Industries. She wasn't a spy for the feds or a rival family. She was hunting the people who killed her brother. The revelation should have made him act. He should have confronted her, exposed her deception, treated her like the potential threat she represented. Instead, he had done something completely out of character. He had protected her, small things at first, redirecting assignments that might have put her in proximity to Kozlov operations, making sure her personnel file stayed buried where curious eyes wouldn't find it. Creating space for her to continue her invisible investigation while shielding her from the attention that might have gotten her killed. He told himself it was strategic. An asset who was gathering intelligence on his rivals could be useful. Let her dig, let her discover what she could, and eventually he would find a way to leverage what she learned. But that wasn't the truth, not really. The truth was that he saw something of himself in her, the quiet determination, the patient fury. The willingness to spend years working toward a goal that most people would have abandoned long ago. She was a fighter, a survivor, a woman forged in the same flames of loss that had shaped his own life. And somewhere along the way, his professional interest had become something else entirely. The operating room doors swung open. Jun-ho was on his feet before Dr. Chen had fully emerged, scanning the surgeon's face for any hint of the news to come. Chen was a master of the poker face, years of delivering life and death verdicts having trained every micro-expression out of his features. "She's alive," Chen said. The relief that crashed through Jun-ho was so intense it nearly took him to his knees. "The bullet nicked her pulmonary artery. Another millimeter and she would have bled out before you got her here. We repaired the damage, but she lost a lot of blood. The next 48 hours are critical. If she makes it through without complications, she should recover fully. There are always risks, Mr. Park, infection, clotting. The human body is unpredictable even under the best circumstances. But she's young, she's healthy, and she's clearly got something to live for. Those factors work in her favor. Something to live for, did she?" Jun-ho wondered what that something was. Her quest for revenge, some dream or goal he knew nothing about. Or maybe, just maybe, something connected to the way she had looked at him in that moment before the bullet hit. "When can I see her? She's being moved to recovery now. She won't wake up for several hours, and when she does, she'll be heavily medicated, but you can sit with her if you want." "I want." The recovery room was small and private, equipped with monitors and equipment that hummed softly in the dim light. Amara lay motionless in the hospital bed, her chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that tracked every beat of her heart. She looked fragile, broken, so different from the quietly capable woman who had moved through his world like a ghost for the past 6 months. Jun-ho pulled a chair to her bedside and sat down, his hand finding hers on top of the blanket. Her fingers were cold, the chill of surgery and blood loss still clinging to her skin. He wrapped his hands around hers, trying to transfer his warmth, his strength, his stubborn refusal to let her go. "You scared me," he said quietly. "I don't get scared. It's not something I allow myself. Fear is weakness, and weakness gets you killed in my world." She didn't respond, couldn't respond. But he kept talking anyway, words spilling out of him that he had never spoken to anyone. "When I was 17, I watched my father die, business rivals looking to take over his operations. They shot him 6 times in our living room while I hid in a closet like a coward. I swore that night that I would never feel powerless again. I would become so strong, so untouchable, that no one could ever hurt me or anyone I cared about." He traced his thumb across her knuckles, marveling at the softness of her skin. "I've spent 20 years building that strength. Creating an empire that answers to me, surrounding myself with power and control and the certainty that I can handle any threat that comes my way." His voice cracked. "And then you threw yourself in front of a bullet, and I realized that all my power means nothing. I couldn't protect you. I couldn't save you. I could only hold you while you bled and scream at a god I stopped believing in years ago." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her cool fingers. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to wake up. You're going to recover. And then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about why a woman with a nursing degree and a dead brother ended up working for my organization. Because I know about Damon, I know about the Kozlovs, and I know you're not here by accident." He paused, his next words coming out barely above a whisper. "I also know that I would tear the world apart to keep you safe. And that terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced, because I don't know what to do with these feelings. I don't know how to be soft, how to be vulnerable, how to let someone in without viewing them as a potential threat." He sat back, still holding her hand, and settled into wait. "But I'm willing to learn if you'll teach me, if you'll give me the chance." The hours passed slowly. Vincent called with updates that Jun-ho barely processed. The Kozlov situation was stabilizing. Mikkel had been delivered to one of their secure locations, and the other families were falling in line now that word had spread about the attempted hit. The streets understood that Park Jun-ho had survived an assassination attempt and responded with devastating efficiency. Challenging him now would be suicide. None of it seemed to matter. The empire he had built felt hollow without her eyes to see it through. The power he had accumulated felt meaningless without someone to share it with. When had this happened? When had this quiet woman become so essential to his existence? He thought back over the months, trying to pinpoint the moment when professional curiosity had transformed into something deeper. Was it the day he had watched her comfort a junior employee who was crying in the stairwell, thinking no one could see? The afternoon he had observed her slipping her lunch to the security guard who always forgot to eat. The evening when she had stayed late to help the cleaning crew finish their work, even though it wasn't her job, 1,000 small moments, 1,000 tiny revelations, each one adding another layer to his understanding of who she was beneath the careful, invisible mask she wore. She was kind in a world that punished kindness. She was soft in a world that crushed anything soft. She was hopeful in a world that had given her every reason to despair. And she had thrown herself in front of a bullet because his life, the life of a man who didn't deserve such sacrifice, had mattered more to her than her own. Why, that was the question that burned in his chest. Why would she do that? What possible reason could she have for saving him? She stirred. The movement was small, just a flutter of her eyelids and a slight turn of her head, but it electrified Jun-ho into immediate attention. He leaned forward, squeezing her hand, willing her to open her eyes. "Amara, can you hear me?" A soft groan escaped her lips, her brow furrowed, as if even the act of returning to consciousness caused her pain. "Easy," he said, his voice softening in ways he didn't know it could. "Take your time, you're safe, you're in a clinic, the bullet is out, and you're going to be okay." Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against even the dim light of the recovery room. For a moment they were unfocused, drifting. Then they found his face and locked on with a sharpness that surprised him. "Jun-ho," her voice was a rasp, barely audible. "You're okay, me?" He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You almost died and your first concern is whether I'm okay?" Had to know. She tried to smile, but it turned into a grimace of pain. "Worth it if you're alive. That's insane." He gripped her hand tighter, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I'm not worth your life. I'm not worth anyone's life. Do you understand what you did? You took a bullet for me, a bullet that would have killed you if it hit an inch to the right." "I know. Then why?" The question tore out of him, carrying all the confusion and fear and desperate need to understand that had been building for hours. "Why would you do that? You barely know me. I'm your boss. I'm a criminal. I'm everything you should hate. Why would you throw your life away for mine?" Amara was quiet for a long moment, her eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him feel exposed in ways he had never experienced. "Because some things matter more than logic," she finally said. "More than plans, more than survival. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She squeezed his hand weakly. "I watched you for 6 months. I saw everything, the violence, the business deals, the power plays. But I also saw you visit the children's hospital on Tuesday nights. I saw you shut down the trafficking operation even though it would have made you millions. I saw you treat the cleaning lady like a human being when everyone else treated her like furniture." Her voice was getting stronger, determination overriding physical weakness. "I came here looking for monsters, for the men who killed my brother, and I found you instead, a man who does terrible things but does them by a code, a man who hurts people but draws lines he won't cross. A man who built an empire of crime but somehow kept a piece of his soul intact. You're romanticizing what I am. No, I'm seeing clearly for the first time." She lifted her hand to his cheek, her touch feather-light. "You asked why I saved you. The real answer is that I couldn't imagine a world without you in it, and that thought scared me more than the bullet." Jun-ho closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, feeling something inside him break open that he had kept locked away for 20 years. "You shouldn't feel that way," he said. "Not about me. I'll only bring you pain. You'll bring me truth, and that's enough." He opened his eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be invisible, tired of hunting ghosts when what I really want is right in front of me." She held his gaze without flinching. "I came here for revenge, but I'm staying for you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and risk and the terrifying promise of something neither of them had expected. "You know what I am," Jun-ho said slowly. "What my world is. If you stay, if you really stay, there's no going back. You'll be part of this life with all its dangers and complications. I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you normalcy. I can't even promise that we'll survive the next year. I'm not asking for promises." "Then what are you asking for?" Amara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Just you, whatever that means, however it looks, for as long as we have." Jun-ho stared at her, this impossible woman who had crashed into his carefully controlled life and shattered every wall he had built. He should say no. He should push her away, arrange for her to disappear to some safe place far from the violence that surrounded him, give her the chance at a normal life that she deserved. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead. "Then you have me," he murmured against her skin. "God help us both." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of medical monitoring and quiet conversations. Dr. Chen confirmed that Amara was recovering well, the surgery a success, her vital signs strong and stable. She would need weeks of rest and months of rehabilitation, but she would survive. She would survive. Jun-ho stayed by her side for most of it, leaving only when business absolutely demanded his attention. Even then, he kept meetings short, delegated more than he ever had before, and found himself constantly checking his phone for updates from the clinic. His men noticed the change. Vincent, ever the diplomat, said nothing directly, but the way he handled reports, prioritizing Amara's security arrangements without being asked, spoke volumes. He understood that the situation had shifted, that his boss's priorities had fundamentally changed. Others in the organization were less subtle. "The boys are talking," Vincent reported during one of Junho's brief returns to business. "About the woman, about how you haven't left her side. Let them talk. Some of them are concerned. They think she might be a weakness, something enemies could exploit. Anyone who tries to exploit her will learn why that's a mistake." Junho's voice was flat, cold, the voice of the crime lord rather than the man who had held Amara's hand through the night. "Make sure that message is clearly understood." And the Kozlov situation, Mikhail, awaiting your attention in the basement. Junho considered this. Part of him wanted to handle the situation personally, to take his time, to make Mikhail understand exactly how catastrophically he had miscalculated. But another part of him, a newer part, wanted to stay with Amara. "Let him wait," he finally said. "Let him sit in the dark and wonder what's coming. The anticipation will be its own punishment." And his father. "The elder Kozlov can wait too. He offered his son's head as a peace offering. I'm not ready to accept or decline. Let them both twist in the wind a while longer." Vincent nodded. "There's one other thing." "What?" "The woman, Amara. I did some additional digging." Vincent's expression was carefully neutral. "Her brother's death, Damon Washington, you knew about it?" "I knew." "You knew and you didn't act." "Mikhail was behind it. That's been confirmed now." "I knew who was responsible. I was waiting for the right moment." The right moment being, when it would hurt the Kozlovs most, when removing Mikhail would destabilize their entire operation. Junho met Vincent's eyes. "I was going to handle it regardless. The attack just accelerated my timeline. So her revenge and your business interests aligned." "They did, and now I handle Mikhail as planned, but I do it for her, not just for business." Junho's jaw tightened. "I want him to know why he's dying. I want him to understand that this is for Damon Washington, for a man he considered insignificant, for a debt he thought no one would ever collect." Vincent was quiet for a moment. "You've changed since she was shot. Something in you is different." "I know. Is that a good thing?" "I don't know yet." Junho stood, "But I'm going to find out." On the third day, Amara was strong enough to sit up in bed and have a real conversation. Junho brought her flowers, feeling absurd and out of place as he carried them into the room. He had ordered assassinations without hesitation, but buying flowers for a woman made him feel like a teenager on his first date. She smiled when she saw them, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face and made something warm bloom in his chest. "You didn't have to do that. I know." He set the vase on her bedside table, arranging the flowers with more care than was probably necessary. "But I wanted to." The great Park Joon-ho bringing flowers to a girl. Her eyes sparkled with gentle teasing. "What would your enemies think? That I've gone soft, and they would be right." He sat in his usual chair, the one that had molded to his shape over 3 days of constant use. "You've made me soft, Amara. It's a problem." "Is it? In my world, softness gets you killed." "Maybe." She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Or maybe it gives you something worth fighting for. Something that makes you stronger, not weaker." He considered her words. "My father was soft. He loved my mother, trusted his partners, believed that people were fundamentally good. It got him killed." "I'm sorry, don't be. His death taught me important lessons. Trust no one, love nothing, build walls so high and thick that nothing can penetrate them." "And did those lessons make you happy?" The question caught him off guard. Happiness. It wasn't something he thought about. Success, yes. Power, certainly. Respect, always. But happiness? "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm not sure I remember what happiness feels like." "That's sad. It's practical. It's lonely." She squeezed his hand. "I know something about loneliness. After Damon died, I disappeared into myself. I stopped seeing friends, stopped participating in life, stopped feeling anything except this cold determination to find the people responsible. For 2 years, I was more ghost than person. But you came back." "Not entirely. I'm still mostly ghost." She smiled, but there was sadness in it, just a ghost with a purpose. "And now that the purpose is almost fulfilled, I don't know." Her eyes met his. "I didn't plan for after. I didn't think I would survive long enough for there to be an after." The words hit him like a physical blow. She had been planning to die. All along, she had been on a suicide mission, willing to sacrifice herself for revenge against the men who took her brother. And then she had sacrificed herself for him instead. "You saved my life," he said quietly, "when you thought your own life was worthless. Not worthless, just complete. I had done what I came to do, found my targets, gathered my information, positioned myself to act. The mission was almost over, and then you happened." She looked away, color rising in her cheeks. "You complicated everything. I tend to do that. You made me want things I had given up wanting. Future connection, something more than just revenge and death. Amara, when that bullet was coming, I didn't think. There was no calculation, no strategy. I just knew that I couldn't let you die. Not when I had just found you. Not when there might be something worth living for beyond my brother's grave." Junho was quiet for a long moment, processing her words, feeling them settle into places inside him that had been empty for years. "I'm going to handle Mikkel," he finally said, "tonight." I've let him wait long enough. Her expression didn't change. I know. Does that bother you, knowing what I'm about to do? Does it bother you, knowing that I know? He considered the question. No, for the first time in my life, I don't want to hide what I am from someone. I want you to see me clearly, even the ugly parts. Good. She lifted his hand to her lips and pressed a kiss against his knuckles. Then go, do what you need to do. Just promise me one thing. What? Come back to me when it's over. I don't want to spend another night wondering if you're okay. The promise was easy to make. It was just 3 words, but the weight behind them, the commitment they represented, felt heavier than any oath he had ever sworn. I promise. The basement was cold and damp and smelled like fear. Mikhail Kozlov hung from chains attached to the ceiling, his wrists raw from struggling, his face a mask of terror and defiance. He had been stripped of his expensive clothing, his jewelry, his shoes. Everything that made him feel powerful had been taken away, leaving only a small, frightened man waiting for death. Junho stood before him, still in the suit he had worn to visit Amara, the contrast between the sterile hospital room and this place of violence stark and intentional. Do you know why you're here? He asked. Mikhail tried to spit at him. It fell short. I know you're going to kill me, so just do it. Stop with the dramatic questions. Not yet. Junho pulled up a chair and sat down, crossing his legs, the picture of casual ease. First, we're going to talk about Damon Washington. The name hit Mikhail like a physical blow. His eyes widened. Who? Don't play dumb. It insults us both. Junho's voice was pleasant, conversational. Damon Washington, 26 years old, owed money to one of your loan sharks, $3,000 to be exact, not a significant sum. But you decided to make an example of him anyway. I don't know what your men beat him to death in an alley. They made it look like a robbery. Very clean work. I'm sure you were proud of how efficiently they handled such a minor problem. Mikhail's face had gone pale. That was 2 years ago. Why do you care about some random? Because that random man had a sister. Junho leaned forward. A sister who spent 2 years planning revenge. A sister who infiltrated my organization looking for information about you. A sister who threw herself in front of a bullet meant for me because somehow, somewhere along the way, she decided I was worth saving. Understanding dawned in Mikhail's eyes. The woman, the one who took the shot. Yes, the woman. Junho stood, removing his jacket and rolling up his sleeves with deliberate precision. She almost died because of you, because your ambition couldn't wait for proper channels. Because you thought killing me would advance your position. Your father disowned you the moment he learned what you had done. He offered your head as a peace offering. Your own blood chose peace with me over your life. The last shred of defiance crumbled. Mikhail began to cry. Please, I'll do anything, give you anything, just you have nothing I want. Junho picked up a tool from the table nearby, something sharp and clinical. Nothing except your suffering. And I intend to take my time collecting it. What happened next was not quick or merciful. Junho was a man of precise violence, and he used that precision now, extracting payment for every wrong Mikhail had committed. For Damon, beaten to death in an alley over a debt he was desperately trying to repay. For Amara, who had lost her brother and almost lost her own life. For the bullet that had nearly stolen the one person who made Junho want to be better than he was. By the time it was over, Mikhail had confessed to everything. Every crime, every order, every casual cruelty he had committed in his climb toward power. He had begged, pleaded, offered everything from money to information to his own father's secrets. None of it mattered. When Junho finally ended it, it was almost merciful. A quick slice across the throat, the same clinical precision with which the surgery had been performed that saved Amara's life. Violence as craft, clean and efficient. Stood in the silence afterward, blood on his hands, feeling something he hadn't expected. Peace. Not happiness exactly, not joy, but a quiet sense of completion, of debts paid and scales balanced, of justice, however dark and twisted, finally served. He cleaned himself up carefully before returning to the clinic, making sure no trace of what he had done remained visible. But when he walked into Amara's room, she took one look at his face and knew. It's done, she said, not a question. It's done. She was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? I don't know. He sat in his chair, suddenly exhausted, empty, like I've been carrying something heavy for a very long time and just set it down. That's how I felt when you told me he was going to be handled, like I could finally let go of the weight I'd been carrying since Damon died. Is that enough, knowing he's gone? It will have to be. She reached for his hand. Revenge doesn't bring people back. It doesn't erase the pain. It just stops new pain from being added, and sometimes that's the best we can hope for. Junho turned her words over in his mind, finding unexpected wisdom in them. You're too good for me, he said. You know that, right? Too kind, too forgiving, too willing to see the best in a man who has done terrible things. Maybe, she smiled, or maybe you're better than you think. Maybe the man who visits children's hospitals and shuts down trafficking operations and brings flowers to a woman in a hospital room is the real you, and the other stuff is just what you have to do to survive. That's a generous interpretation. It's the one I'm choosing to believe. She tugged his hand, pulling him closer. Now get up here. This bed is too big for just me, and I'm tired of sleeping alone. He hesitated. Your injuries, I'm not asking for acrobatics, just company. Just you beside me where I can hear you breathing and know you're real. How could he refuse that? Carefully, mindful of her wounds and the various tubes and wires still attached to her, Junho climbed onto the narrow hospital bed. It was cramped and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. Amara curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, her arm across his chest. "This is nice," she murmured. "This is insane. We've known each other for 6 months and spoken maybe 100 words before this week. And yet here we are, and yet here we are." She tilted her head up to look at him. "Do you regret it, any of it? I regret that you almost died. I regret that it took a bullet to make me admit what I was feeling. I regret all the time we wasted dancing around each other." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "But I don't regret you. I couldn't." "Good." She settled back against him with a contented sigh. "Because you're stuck with me now. Is that a threat or a promise?" "Both." They lay together in the quiet of the hospital room, surrounded by beeping machines and dim lights, two broken people who had somehow found wholeness in each other. Outside, Junho's empire continued its operations. Deals were made, territories were managed, the endless churn of criminal enterprise grinding forward. But for the first time in his adult life, he didn't feel the need to be at the center of it all. The machine would run without him for a few more hours. It would have to, because right now, in this moment, there was nowhere else he wanted to be. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Amara's recovery progressed steadily, her strength returning day by day. Junho moved her from the clinic to his penthouse, ostensibly for security reasons, but really because he couldn't stand the thought of her being anywhere he wasn't. She fit into his life with surprising ease. His staff, trained to be invisible and unobtrusive, quickly learned that the new woman in their boss's life was to be treated with absolute respect and given anything she needed. His lieutenants, initially suspicious of her influence, came to accept her presence when they saw that she had no interest in their business and made no attempt to interfere. She was simply there, a calm center in the storm of his existence, a reminder that there was more to life than power and paranoia. They spent long evenings together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his father, about the guilt and rage that had shaped his young adulthood. She told him about Damon, about the brother who had practically raised her when their parents were too lost in their own problems to pay attention. They discovered shared interests and complementary differences. She loved movies, the older the better, and he found himself willingly sitting through black and white classics that he never would have watched alone. He loved cooking, a secret hobby he had never shared with anyone, and she became his enthusiastic taste tester. Small intimacies, quiet moments. The building blocks of something that felt terrifyingly real. One night, several weeks after she had moved in, they sat together on his balcony overlooking the city lights. She was wrapped in one of his sweaters, her curly hair loose around her shoulders, her dark skin glowing in the soft light from inside. "I have something to tell you," she said. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, at least I hope it's not." She turned to face him. "I've been thinking about what comes next for me, for us." "What conclusions have you reached?" "I can't go back to nursing, not now. Too many questions, too much history." She paused. "But I want to do something meaningful, something that helps people instead of hunting them." "What did you have in mind?" "There's a community center on the south side, the same neighborhood where I grew up, where Damon and I used to play. It's struggling, underfunded, understaffed, barely keeping its doors open. You want to save it. I want to try." She met his eyes. "But it would require resources, significant resources, and I would need to stay out of the spotlight given my connection to you." Junho was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. A community center funded by his money would draw attention. Questions would be asked, connections would be made. But looking at Amara, at the hope in her eyes and the determination in her jaw, he found that he didn't care. "How much do you need?" "It's not that simple. I'm not asking you to write a check. I'm asking you to help me set up a legitimate foundation, something clean, something separate from your other business, something that can do real good without the stain of how the money was originally made. A legacy project, if you want to call it that." She reached for his hand. "I know this is asking a lot. I know it's complicated, but I need something of my own, something that proves my life didn't end when Damon's did." He understood then what she was really asking for. Not just money or resources, but permission. Permission to have a purpose beyond him, beyond their relationship, beyond the dark gravity of his world. "I'll make some calls tomorrow," he said. "There are people who specialize in this kind of thing, setting up foundations, laundering reputations, creating distance between source and application. You'll help me. I'll do more than help." He pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I'll fund the entire thing. Whatever you need, whatever you want to accomplish, it's yours. Junho, let me do this." His voice was soft but intense. "You saved my life. Let me help you build something with yours." She kissed him then, a slow and tender kiss that spoke of gratitude and affection and the complicated love that was growing between them day by day. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how much paperwork is involved." She laughed, and the sound was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. Months passed. The Amara Washington Community Foundation launched quietly, without fanfare, its connections to Park Industries buried beneath layers of legitimate investment and careful misdirection. The center on the south side received its funding, its doors staying open, its programs expanding to reach more children, more families, more people who needed help. Amara threw herself into the work with the same focused intensity she had once applied to revenge. She was there every day, running programs, mentoring kids, building something positive from the ashes of her pain. And Jun-ho watched her bloom. The invisible woman he had first noticed was gone, replaced by someone vibrant and alive. She laughed more easily now. She smiled more frequently. She seemed, for the first time since he had known her, genuinely happy. It changed him too. He found himself attending foundation events, meeting the children whose lives Amara was touching, seeing firsthand the impact that clean money could have when applied to worthy causes. It was strange, this feeling of doing good, foreign and uncomfortable and oddly addictive. His business continued as always, the violence, the power plays, the endless machinations of criminal enterprise. But he found himself drawing clearer lines, making choices that prioritized people over profit, looking for ways to minimize harm even as he maintained his empire. Amara never asked him to change. She never demanded that he abandon his life or reform his ways. She simply existed beside him, a living example of another path, and let him make his own choices about who he wanted to become. It was, he realized, the most effective form of persuasion he had ever encountered. 1 year after the bullet that almost killed her, Jun-ho took Amara to the spot where it had happened. The warehouse had been demolished, replaced by a small park that served the surrounding community. Another quiet project from the foundation, turning a place of violence into something children could enjoy. They sat together on a bench overlooking a playground, watching kids run and shout and play without any awareness of the history beneath their feet. "A year," Amara said quietly. "Hard to believe." "A lot can change in a year." Everything changed. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "I came here looking for revenge and found something I didn't know I was missing. A wounded criminal with terrible social skills, a man who was brave enough to let me see behind his walls, who gave me a future when I thought my life was already over." She looked up at him. "Who loves me even when he still struggles to say the words." Jun-ho was quiet for a long moment. The truth was, he did struggle with the words. They felt too small for what he felt, too simple for the complicated emotion that filled his chest whenever he looked at her. He had spent so long suppressing feeling that expressing it felt unnatural, like speaking a language he had learned as a child and then forgotten. But she deserved to hear them. After everything she had done, everything she had given up, everything she had risked, she deserved at least that much. "I love you," he said. The words came out rough, unpracticed, but sincere. "I love you in ways I don't fully understand. You make me want to be better than I am. You make me believe that maybe I can be, and I am grateful every single day that you chose to save my life instead of letting that bullet take me." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "You know, that's the most I've ever heard you say about feelings. Don't get used to it." She laughed and kissed him, and for a moment the world around them disappeared. There was only this bench, this park, this woman who had transformed his existence from something cold and empty into something worth living. When they finally separated, she was smiling. "I love you too," she said, in case that wasn't clear. "It was clear from the moment you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me, but it's nice to hear anyway." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the children play, feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces. Jun-ho thought about everything that had led to this moment, the violence and loss, the patient revenge and unexpected love, the bullet that had nearly ended everything and somehow became the beginning of something new. He had spent his life building walls, accumulating power, protecting himself from the vulnerability that had killed his father. And then one woman, one impossible woman, had crashed through every defense he had constructed and planted herself in the center of his heart. It should have terrified him. In many ways, it still did. Love was weakness, attachment was danger. Caring about someone gave your enemies a weapon to use against you. But looking at Amara, feeling her hand in his, watching the joy on her face as she observed the community she had helped build, Jun-ho realized that some risks were worth taking. Some people were worth dying for, and some loves were worth living for. The strongest hearts are not those that never break. They are the ones that shatter completely and choose to heal anyway. They are the ones that risk everything for another person, knowing the cost of loss but deciding that the chance of love is worth the price. Amara Washington saved a crime lord's life with her own body, and in doing so, she saved something far more precious. She saved his soul, and he spent the rest of his days proving worthy of that sacrifice, not through grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through 1,000 small choices every single day. The choice to be kind when cruelty would be easier, the choice to protect when destruction would be profitable, the choice to love openly and vulnerably in a world that punished such openness. They say that love changes people, but that's not quite accurate. Love reveals people. It strips away the masks and walls and careful defenses, exposing the truth of who we really are beneath all the protective layers. Amara revealed Jun-ho to himself. And what she found there, what she chose to nurture and believe in, became the foundation for everything that followed. 2 broken people, 1 impossible love, and a future that neither of them had dared to imagine. That is the power of choosing someone else's life over your own. That is the miracle of sacrifice and the reward of vulnerability. That is what it means to truly, completely, dangerously love.